to die, but help the pilgrims to survive. Was a redneck.
Welcome, patrons. That is Stevie Wonder. The song is Black Man. If you're having a bad day, turn on Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder. Just listen to this. There's no way to have a bad day listening to Stevie Wonder. My mom had this album, and we always played this record as kids and would dance to it. My girlfriend has a little girl, so we turned this on and she just dances. So I turned it on in the car last night and she was just shuffling and shaking her arms. Loves it. I mean, come on, Harry. How can you not love this?
This Duke is one of my favorites all the time.
Music is a world within itself, with a language we all understand. With an equal opportunity for all to sing, dance, and clap their hands.
So here's the game plan for you two. We have to talk about Kenosha, Kyle. We just do. Or else we'll lose the news cycle. I want to have like a longer form discussion about riots and stuff next week, but we'll give some initial thoughts and maybe take like 20 minutes on it. And I've got a clip that I want to play from Advisory Opinions, which is the podcast of... it's from the Dispatch. Man, I really should know their names. I always want to call him Glenn Jacobs, but I think that's the wrestler. David French and Sarah Isger. And then we'll talk about executive orders and Trump's campaign promises for 2020 and DACA and foreign policy. So,
You can feel it all over. You can feel it all over, baby. You can feel it all over. You can feel it all over, people. You can feel it all over. You can feel it all over.
all right. Unfortunately, we got to end with Stevie and turn that off. And I'd much rather listen to Stevie Wonder than me, but here we are.
Welcome to the new format. Right? We're just music listeners. We listen to music and review it for the next hour and a half.
Honestly, if we could get away with it, I would.
Great April Fool's Day episode.
Yeah. Here's something that is better than the news. That's why there's an echo.
So while we play pictures of puppies playing,
yeah,
we'll just play good music and make everybody happy. And
just
they had to do that
forget
for
the news cycle.
They had to do that for it was an anime TV show that came out, and the last episode they had an episode that was so depressing, so sad. The government forced them to do something happy, and all they did was like look at this nice boat and some nice music playing. That's all they had.
The Animal Planet, Harry, and I think you're on your computer mic, not your mic. Your room echoey.
Your room echoey.
So, the Animal Planet has like a show where it's literally just kittens playing with each other and puppies, and it is such a fun, happy show that they should put on broadcast right now.
Let's see here.
You can feel it all over.
Yeah, every year during the Super Bowl, I just turn over to watch the Puppy Bowl.
Yeah.
Instead.
Puppy Bowl's good. Oh, I see what's going on. It's actually taking from the Logitech.
That's what I figured. Yep.
How the heck did it do that?
Does it all the time.
You stupid.
On the executive order stuff, it's different subjects and it's bam, bam, bam. So if you want to elaborate on one of them, I'll kind of pause and just or as I'm reading it, just like raise your hand or whatever. Give me some sort of visual signal. Otherwise, I'll just keep rolling for the sake of time.
Test.
Same.
Testing 1, 2. Let's see.
You gotta be careful. Discord likes to just hijack your mics and spin it all around on you. So.
I know I had like it took my headphones there for a bit. I just had to turn it off. I couldn't hear anything. Right.
And Dennis, you may be a little too loud. I hear a bit of a whistle, like a white noise. Yeah, that's better. There you go.
Or a white noise. All right. Now it says it's coming through the Scarlet. So
you may just move your mic closer to your mouth. They finally added this feature, so I can do this.
What feature?
You can shuffle the faces on the thing here.
Yeah. See, I was planning actually like
there you go. That's better.
Do my China episode. I was actually going to try to use practice using some StreamYard because actually it's not bad. I loved it so far.
Yeah, it's
anytime I don't have to install software, it's moves right to my top of the list. Of like, cool, I want to use this.
Super easy to use. It's legit.
Mm-hmm. I don't have to worry about some bad bug, get some 0-day hack, and it gets on my computer because it's just my web browser.
All right, you nerds ready?
No. What? I just want to know why we got to talk about this Kyle guy.
Because we do. Because every libertarian's losing their fucking mind right now. And somebody has to be the voice of reason, and somehow that's us.
But we don't have any good information to make any of this stuff.
Yes, we do. We have plenty of fucking information. There's a charge document. There's 9 million hours of video. He's interviewed before the fucking shooting. Like, how are you going to sit there and tell me there's no information?
I'm going to need There's too much information.
There's too much information. You know nothing about every other rioter except you know all the shit about this rioter, and everybody loves him because he's their rioter.
And the victims, so we're saying that I'll get into it, but yeah, it's just crazy stuff. But I've got a screenshot of a Misc guy who says, I used to think Rothbard in '92 was bad because he was talking about sending in cops to kill the people, and it's like I agree with him now. I think we should do that.
Damn.
Yeah, no, the paleo-libertarian spirit is really coming out. We ought to do a bonus episode on that and talk about Rothbard Paul and Rockwell in '92 and some of that stuff. Because they're literally, like, if you're disturbed by some of the libertarian conversation around the Kenosha Kyle guy, like, just go back and look at the LA riots in '92. They're literally just repeating the same stuff, knowingly or unknowingly. So, all right.
Yeah, it's all unknowingly. Can I refresh my coffee cup though?
Yeah. We'll take our time.
I was up late last night. This might be too soon for this joke, but I don't care. We're discussing new candidates for the new Black Panther. You've got to. Is that too soon for that joke?
No, it's so sad. Like, nobody knew he was sick, but, like, I guess he got bullied, taking pictures down because he looked too skinny. I saw a video of him about 6 months ago, and he clearly looked like somebody going through chemo, and, like, everybody was just calling him a crackhead because they didn't know what was going on, and it's such a bummer. Like, I've never seen the movie, but, I understand its significance, and it's, really, anytime you see somebody like John Andretti or I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but 43 is too soon to die of cancer.
Chadwick Boseman.
Yes, thank you. It's 50 something was too soon for John Andretti, and like he had a. I'll save it for the show. We'll briefly.
Oh, meanwhile, I agree with Creighton. So.
I know it's everybody's being realigned. All right, here we go. You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Find more great shows like this at wearelibertarians.com.
just some boring subjects.
Understand the risk to our country.
Freedom brings people together.
You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com.
Welcome to the program. My name is Chris Spangle. Thank you for being here. It is August 29th, 2020. Everybody goes, oh, I can't wait for 2020 to be over. What a horrible year. And I go, what makes you think that 2021 is going to be any different for any of this? So, starting on a hopeful note. So this episode, we're going to touch ever so briefly on the Kenosha stuff because we have to. And then we're going to spend the majority of the episode wrapping up Donald Trump's record as president, giving you facts and policy prescriptions that he championed and actual things that he did. Everybody, including us, talks a lot about the bluster, so we're just trying to give you an idea of what he's done and where he's going. And we'll touch at the end on Donald Trump's what he's proposing in his second term. If you haven't listened to part one, go check that out. There's also one on Biden and Kamala Harris, and we will also do one. I ran out of music. This intro is so long, I ran out of music. And we're also going to do a part two on what Joe Biden's proposing. So, and then we'll also talk to the Libertarians and Joe Jorgensen. So, with that being said, stay tuned.
Warning. This show is for adults, produced by semi-adults. So the language is sometimes strong and offensive.
I don't know what I said.
Welcome to We Are Libertarians, where our goal is to help you sound smarter while talking to your friends. We examine current events from a libertarian perspective while treating modern politics with all of the irreverence it deserves.
There has been lie after lie.
We toss out the screaming heads, put people before political parties, and give context to the news to make you think. Now, here's our host, a 15-year veteran of politics and media, Chris Spangle.
Welcome back to the program. Apologize for such a long intro, but I'm very tense this morning. There's a lot going on, and it's I think everybody feels that. Like there's just a lot of I'm not anxious, but I'm more angry. So we'll talk a little bit about that. A lot of disappointing news. Let's start with Harry Price. Not that Harry Price is here. That's not the disappointing part. Is it Chadwick Boseman, who played Black Panther? He passed away at 43 of colon cancer, which just took one of my favorite race car drivers, John Andretti, too soon. And seriously, I think it's a wake-up call for I'll be 37 next month, and colon cancer is something that is easily treatable if caught early on. John Andretti said, I just didn't want to go get it done last year, and that was the year that they would have caught it and I would have lived, and unfortunately he passed. And he apparently has been dealing with this since 2016 and has done all these amazing movies and fought through cancer and then passed away. And I'm bringing this up just because I know that a lot of our audience is approaching middle age, and I'm long overdue to have that doctor's appointment at 37 going, all right, what do I need to do? Like heart scans, blood tests, where do you need to put your finger, that sort of thing. And so, this is Tony Soprano was sort of that when he died too. It was kind of that wake-up call of anything can happen at any time, so stay woke in terms of your own health, Harry. You're in extremely good shape. You are giving up yoga right now to do this. I mean, what were your thoughts when you saw it?
Yeah, it did come out of left field because most people, he's very private about it. Also like how quickly, the news spread. It was just, it just also just shows you like you really need to check into your body and watch out for yourself, especially males. Most people get, they're always checking in at their medical condition all the time for different aspects of their life. Men just, for some reason, we don't do that until something breaks or we feel something funny. And then sometimes you're right. It's that time that they just didn't catch it because it's just not something that, we're used to of like checking in on our own personal bodies. So
yeah, Rhinehold, go ahead, Harry. Sorry.
I'm just going to say, yeah. So please, if this is the wake up call you needed just to go in and give yourself a checkup, just go do that. Just for myself, I don't go to the doctor that often either. My wife usually makes one for me. So,
well, I don't want to go because I don't want to find out there's something wrong. And I don't feel that that's the healthiest solution, but that's sort of the male mentality of if I go, they'll tell me I'm broken and I don't want to have to deal with it. And Rhinehold, you're really good you're always going to the doctor. I don't think you're sick or anything. You're just like, I had this tested. Every month you're going to a doctor to get something tested. Are you not? Oh, you're muted. You should unmute yourself because this is a broadcast.
Is that how that works?
Yeah.
You can hear me? Okay, well, that's interesting. No, it's my wife that's going to the doctor all the time, not me.
Oh, okay.
I shouldn't. I mean, I have certain things that have happened that I've had to have checked out, but and I've had all the the man club stuff. As a friend of mine, comedian, has stated that you're not in the man club until a team of doctors can show you where your prostate is. But my wife had she had ovarian cancer. She was 41 and stage 4, and she's been fighting that tooth and nail for the past decade. So she was touch and go for a long time, and had a reoccurrence and Mayo Clinic and just all kinds of doctor stuff that we've had to go through because of that. And get checked out, because I don't want to get bad news like that. And I've had my father's going through a similar thing right now too. So it's better to find out so they can do something about it, as opposed to just kind of ignore it until it's too late to do anything.
Yep. And ladies too, but y'all are better about it than we are, and we're talking.
My wife hates going. She's like, I don't want to go to the hospital because they'll keep me. I don't want to go to the doctor because they'll tell me something wrong. I mean, she's been the same way. So,
all right. So ironically, we're starting at the most depressing part, then getting to another depressing topic, and the most hopeful part of the show is probably going to be the Donald Trump record. So that's how we're rolling today. It is what it is. I want to touch briefly on we often like to talk about trends within the movement and sort of what the conversation is in the libertarian world, because a lot of our listeners are engaged in that. And I don't think that this is just a conversation that's happening in our world, but it is the role of Kyle Rittenhouse in the riots in Kenosha, Wisconsin. If you're living under a rock and you don't know what happened, there was I'm blanking on Blake's first name.
Is there a space in this rock if we could move in? No. Oh.
No. Yeah. What is Blake's first name? Is it Eric?
No.
The man who was shot 7 times in the back by the cop.
Jacob Blake.
Thank you. So Jacob Blake there's conflicting reports. He was either breaking up a fight between 2 women, or he was there and had a basically it was an ex and he was not supposed to be there, and the police were called on him. Not sure which is the truth.
I think both are the truth, to be honest with you. So
okay.
I think he was breaking up a fight, but one of the people in the fight was an ex that didn't want him there. So she called the police, and the police arrived, and within the time they got the call from dispatch to the time he was shot was about 3 minutes. Right. So that's not a long time. So they were told that he had a warrant. He was there not doing anything wrong in his mind, but they tried to apprehend him. He said he didn't want nothing to do with that. So he started to walk away, and they decided that he was a threat. So,
hold on. Is the sound good? We're supposedly having some sound problems. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And they also, there's been conflicting reports, people trying to say that he had a gun, which he did not have. They said, trying to say he had a knife, and there's no evidence that he had one on his person. They did say they found one in the floorboard of the vehicle, but there's no evidence that they knew that or anything. So it is hard to tell because the video is hard to understand some of the words. So the reports are that people are saying that they were saying he has, dropped the knife, but you can't tell that for sure from the audio. It's kind of hard to make out, and no witnesses who are there say he had a knife on him at the time.
Yeah, all of these incidents fall under the rubric of this is an incredibly large, complex society, and there are a lot of things that go into an incident like this that are very difficult to ascertain in the middle of a passion. I've learned my lesson after the Covington kids. Like, after the Covington kids, I came out and made moral pronouncements about the kid in the MAGA hat, and then I was just flat wrong and embarrassed and apologized for it. And so in these situations, I've just stopped trying to make moral pronouncements, even if it's pretty much as clear as like the Rittenhouse thing, where there's, Harry off air for the patrons was like, well, we don't know all the facts. I'm like, there was an interview with the kid before. There's 900 angles of video on the Rittenhouse thing. There's a charge document now. Like, there's a lot of evidence, but even then it's just sort of like I'm Blake and some of these other tragedies. It's just like sit back and watch and see what happens. And so, the reality is there's a pattern of police shootings. It's like we always argue about step 5, right? We want to argue in a complex, complicated situation for our team. Like, Blake is good, Blake is bad. Rittenhouse is good, Rittenhouse is bad. Instead of like just hanging back and kind of waiting and understanding that the cop has their own thought process, he has his thought process. Like, all this stuff is just a tragedy, and the small business owner that has his place torched is a tragedy. Rittenhouse is a tragedy. The people that he killed it's a tragedy. Like, and I'm just so exhausted by the constant need to force a binary good or bad or moral judgment on all these situations, and focusing and dividing each other on that moral pronouncement instead of on that one incident and that moment of time on this one piece of video, and is this or is this not, and this, and instead of like, all right, well, what were the steps that lead to a 17-year-old showing up feeling he needed to defend other people's property? Like, what goes into his decision making? What leads somebody like the people that he killed to show up to riot or to go and just hang out and be aggressive and yell in people's faces? What goes into, a cop shooting a man 7 times in the back in front of his 3 children? Like, all this stuff is just like, this has been probably the toughest week since March or April for me, because like I hadn't really followed the Kenosha stuff and the Blake shooting because I was busy with other things. And then like the first time I paid attention was when I watched the video of Rittenhouse running around the car, shooting people, and then running back around, looking what he did, and running off. And then watching all the different videos and all the different angles. And I have to say that my first reaction to it was just incredible sadness for not only Rittenhouse, but also his victims. Like, and I know you're not supposed to feel sorry for Rittenhouse, or you're not supposed to feel sorry for, the people, the rioters or protesters or whichever they were there. I know you're not supposed to have positive emotions or emotions of those complicated feelings about it, because you're supposed to pick a team and argue it. But I talk to kids like Kyle Rittenhouse every single day on We Are Libertarian social media, especially on Instagram. And it's often very difficult, and it's sometimes like talking to a brick wall. And they're very indoctrinated with a certain strain of thinking, and very influenced by other meme pages. We talk. It's why we talk a lot about this stuff, and why we try to warn people about their personal influence over others and the responsibility that each of us, like, I have worked with audiences from dozens to millions over the course of 20 years. And I recognize the responsibility that I have because of this privilege of getting to speak to you as somewhat of an authority in your life. And I take that really seriously. So like, I don't want to, I oppose seatbelt laws, but I wouldn't tell you to go out and drive around without your seatbelt, right? Like, I oppose the government trying to attack smoking, but I wouldn't go out and tell you to start smoking because it's not healthy for you. The idea that we would encourage young men to go out with AR-15s or just to show up to any of this shit is so dangerous to me. Like, and I just think that it's sort of a lust for violence that we're encouraging, and it's really a lot of the gun culture movement needs to examine, like, where are you leading these kids? Because when you're 17, you do have some responsibility for yourself. You do have a cognitive adult brain somewhat, but you're also not sophisticated and not seeing things in the way that the three of us see things because we're adult men. And it's easy in this age and this day where everybody's so disconnected, especially young men. There's a great book called Why Young Men about how gangs recruit young men and the psychology that plays into it of, we know you're vulnerable, we know you're lonely, we know you're desperate for community, and we're going to give you a sense of meaning, and we want you to do these escalatory behaviors to prove that you're part of the club. And, you know, it ends up putting those vulnerable, impressionable young men into jail. And you're starting to see that trend somewhat on both sides. I mean, it's not just the right. I mean, consider myself more of the right. I see more of it. I'm, former Republican, I'm in a red state. Like, that's who I see more, which is probably why I react to some of this stuff more. But I know if you look at the ages of the people that died in Kenosha, they're all young. The people that, if you go, Nick Gillespie did an excellent interview that I highly recommend on Portland with a reporter who went out and talked to the people who were in Antifa and rioting in Portland. And what she found is that most of them are street kids. They're homeless teens, that are finding a sense of meaning by being part of Antifa. They're not there because they're ideological. They're there because they have nobody else in their life. She literally said that some of them tell her that the street kids, the homeless teens, are willing to stand on the front lines between the other protesters and police because nobody cares if they die. Like, I wanted to, that is, Indianapolis is the 12th largest city. We have 2,000 homeless teenagers in Indianapolis because there's no wraparound services. And so when protests spring up, they moved into the riots here in Indianapolis a few months ago. And you found time and time again in reporting, in anecdotal evidence, that a lot of these kids are homeless teens. They're definitely ideological people, but there's a lot of people involved in all of these sides who are young and vulnerable. And I personally am not going to use my voice to push anybody to go out and riot. Because make no mistake, Kyle Rittenhouse was a rioter. He was just your type of rioter, which is why you're okay with it. I think it's an absolute tragedy that this man, this kid, went out and there's rumors that his mom drove him. And he's not like a libertarian kid. He was in the front row of a Trump rally and back the blue all the way. I don't know. Am I wrong for having sympathy, I guess, for these two sides and also just disgust for the environment that leads up to it? Like, the voter picks the politician that promises all kinds of action and government force. Then the police have to go and enforce those laws, which increases the interaction they have with the public. And then more people get killed because of those violent interactions. Then there's outrage, rightful outrage over deaths at the hands of the state. And then people come out and show their rage, which enrages other people who then go out. And the violence is just tit for tatting its way to someplace very dangerous. And encouraging that is not something I'm going to lend my voice to, because libertarianism is ultimately about nonviolence, Rhinehold.
Yeah, and the worst part is that on top of all of that, then you have people trying to politicize the whole thing.
Right.
So you have people who are trying to gain votes and to garner power by pitting these people who do have these conflicting thought processes and desires and experiences in life, and pitting them against each other and making them feel like their only the only resort they have is violence. Right. I mean, how long, we talk about these protests shouldn't turn into violent riots, and they shouldn't. But the problem is that they're arguing about things they're complaining about things that have been a problem for decades. And I hear comments like, well, what, they should just stop rioting and then we could sit down and have the conversation and try to work that out. They've been doing that for decades. They're not getting anybody to listen to them. They're not getting anybody to care about their position, at least nobody in power, in order to do something about it. So they feel like they have to amp it up and try to get attention, to try to make a point.
We're going to flesh out the riot stuff a little bit more and talk about it, but I don't buy that. I don't buy that every single person that is destroying property is ideologically motivated. I
agree with you completely.
A lot of them are breaking into Best Buys. Yeah, they're breaking into Best Buys to sell things on Facebook Marketplace.
Most of the people who are doing the looting are doing that. I think there are people who like the people who are tagging the federal buildings in Portland, right? They weren't doing that to try and get money or opportunism. They were trying to make a point. But then the people going into the Best Buy or breaking into some other store and trying to run out with a bunch of goods, those people are just opportunists, right? Those are people who, but they're not the movement. They're not the people who are trying to get the attention is what I'm trying to say. So I hate when we try to say all of the people protesting are terrorists, or all of the people who are trying to defend property are horrible people too. It's like you have good people on both sides. And I know I just said something that Trump said.
Wow.
I know I did it. And Trump gets.
I have Rhinehold derangement syndrome now.
I completely don't like what happened there with what Trump said, but I also will defend that Trump wasn't trying to say that the racists were good people. I mean, the left's trying to make it sound like he said that, but that's not what he was trying to say. If you read what he was saying, he was trying to say that, there are people who are just upset about this, and there are people who are upset about it on both sides. And those people should not be discounted because you've got bad actors on both sides who are doing that sort of thing. So you're going to hear me defend Trump.
No, and you should, because that particular statement about Charlottesville has been completely taken out of context and used against Trump in an unfair way because he was trying to be nuanced. He just is never nuanced. He has no experience with it.
And he's not really good at it.
Yeah. Now, Harry, you're a gun owner. I am not. I don't I want people who don't. Are you? Rhinehold, if you want to say.
I have several guns. I live in the country. I have to have guns.
Yeah. Let me just say that if you are not familiar with gun culture, 99.999% of people who own guns do not act like a 17-year-old in Kenosha, Washington, or Kenosha, Wisconsin. I guarantee that made every gun owner think more about gun safety. You guys tell me if I'm wrong, but I want people to understand that when people try to use something like this to push gun control, they're absolutely wrong, and they don't understand what I have learned over 15 years, because when I was hired by the Libertarian Party, I didn't tell anybody this, but I was just like, I don't get why you'd want a gun. I don't understand it. I didn't understand it at all. And then over 15 years, I watched the unbelievable care and concern and respect and responsibility that gun owners take in owning a firearm, and this is not representative of gun owners. And anybody that tries to make it so is just being manipulative and wrong. But
there's stories about the Kenosha thing where the other guys who are there who are more organized, boog guys, looking for the boogaloo guys. They encountered Kyle and were trying to distance themselves from him because they felt something was off about him.
Really?
Right. There are a lot of them who are just like, he was acting a little sketchy or whatever. We just we should act. And no one else did. I mean, all those people with guns there, and then, no one else seemed to have felt the need to engage in the actions he engaged in. Right. It wasn't like he was a lone guy by himself with a gun and then happened to get himself into a bad situation so much as it was, there was a whole bunch of people there, but they weren't going to use deadly force or raise their guns or do any of that stuff unless it was very clear danger.
They probably, I think it's the Kenosha, I think they had a name, the Kenosha Militia or the Kenosha Guard, or they had some name, and there was some level of organization amongst the people who were there that night. Correct. And they were there for, in my mind, noble causes. They want to protect small business owners. They want to protect the livelihoods of people, because and we're going to talk about law and order in just a moment, but the city, the state has completely failed in protecting most of the. That's where most of the blame lays. Like I don't know if this has been verified, but the mayor of Kenosha asked for 700 guard the night of the shooting, and he only allowed 250 begrudgingly. And the governor is basically a weak governor, and is basically these. Here's how you know politicians are all spineless weasels. Okay. The Republicans don't really have any idea of where their base is, because they're so beat up by polls from 2016 and Donald Trump and not trusting polls that they really just kind of go along. They make the calculation that it's safer to go along with Donald Trump because he's president. And, if the majority of their base is MAGA, then they're going to be fine. But if anybody steps out, and they've seen a couple social signals in Mark Sanford and Justin Amash that stepping out will get you killed politically. Democrats are the same way. They don't know where their base is at. And so these Democratic mayors and Democratic governors don't really know where their base is at on things like BLM. They see the polling where, the majority of people in this country support the general notion of Black Lives Matter, that Black Lives Matter, that Black people are equal and deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and that the boot should be taken off of their neck and criminal justice reform should be enacted. Most people agree with that, and so and they don't want to alienate those independent and Democratic base by coming out, because that general notion and BLM have been so associated with the rioters, and it's different, and so they don't want to come out and be seen as doing anything that is pro-police or pro-law and order, when the state has taken the monopoly of security and said, we'll be responsible for this. You can be responsible for your own home, but even if you draw a gun in self-defense in your own home, we're probably going to put you in jail. And so we're going to take care of your safety. We guarantee it. And then these liberal cities have completely failed and broken down. And it is not an irrational thought that if property is not going to be protected by the state, then the citizens need to protect their own community. It definitely is. I mean, what do you think, Harry?
And that's what you're seeing with like a lot of the militias going out there and protecting their own streets. That's what is going on, especially in a lot of the different neighborhoods in Oregon. Because a lot of them they're just protesting at the courthouse downtown. No, they are going to residential neighborhoods, waking people up at all hours on the night, making sure, you can't sleep, no justice, no sleep. So people are, they're getting upset and they're wanting to protect themselves. And we're watching also some of these bad actors in state control use the power of the state just to protect themselves. We've seen this with the Chicago mayor using the police to make sure there's no protesting happening near her house. So
Minneapolis granted themselves security guards with guns while they're talking about abolishing the police department.
Correct.
The hypocrisy. That's why I always go, why is the right so terrified of the far left? Because once people see these people, they start to turn against them. I had a conversation with Miss Patton Dion, and it'll come out this Tuesday, and they're just like, why is a crowd of white people screaming in a white woman's face about racism? Why the moment of progress, has, I'm not going to put words in their mouth, but this was my interpretation, like, we could have had more, and we're arguing about riots. Like,
Right.
what the fuck are you guys doing? You're not helping.
Yeah, it's long been known, like, it's easier, like a leaderless movement. It's hard to stop.
Yeah.
It grows really quickly, and and sometimes it's amazing on what it can do. The other problem is you muddy the message. The message gets muddy. So one problem, like BLM movement, BLM organization, they was like, well, it kept trying to separate themselves, which caused confusion, right? And then anyone realized they could just call themselves BLM because the BLM organization separates them from the BLM movement, so anyone can call them that. So all their messages got muddied. So any person in the MAGA crowd could easily find a news article or a audio clip of someone is like, I'm with BLM and we support these looting. They need to take, this is reparations. And we're like, and use this as a cudgel, like, oh yeah, this is why they're all bad. And just get rid of all the every momentum that BLM had, from the George Floyd protest. It's disgusting. I don't want to tell people what they should do but they should have distanced themselves, like, nope, it's organization, or it's, I hate trying to tell them to do a top-down thing, but hey, if someone's using your name and trying to take out your movement, sometimes you need to step up and separate yourself from that.
Well, that's why I think you're starting, like Joe Biden put out a video denouncing riots. Like, you're going to start seeing, and it really, a lot of this falls squarely on these politicians that, like here in Indianapolis, the police department they feel that they've been completely abandoned by the mayor.
Yes.
And so we had an incident where Deshaun Reed was shot and killed by police. He had a gun, and BLM has really gone to bat for him, but not many other people are willing to because of the way that the shooting happened, but the mayor wants to please that constituency because he's a Democrat. But at the same time, the police are almost ready to stage walkouts. So there's this very complicated issue of, it all kind of falls under how we interact with the law and where we're at in terms of the size of the state. And so this is the conversation that instead of arguing over, was this self-defense or not? Was this a good shooting or not? Were the cops justified or not? Like, that to me is just sort of not helpful uses of energy, right? Like, we're arguing again over step 5 when we should start at step 1 and start thinking about our relationship to the state and our relationship to how the government functions. And even in a completely anarcho-capitalist, anarcho-communist state, there's still law enforcement. There's still justice. Like, it's not Somalia. And I think part of the libertarian conservative reaction to canonizing Kyle Rittenhouse signals to people that don't understand anything about guns that you really do want Somalia. And I think it's it's a harmful argument. And we often say, oh, the gun debate is settled. But like, everybody kind of thought after George Floyd, police reform was settled. Like, it's going to happen. But then they lost the moment with the riots. They lost the argument. And now that is not really on the table, which is incredibly frustrating to black people and is going to start bubbling up. You're not seeing the frustration with the white liberal, the white woke person yet, but you will. And that's why I just think it's like, by turning off the people that are natural allies, which is kind of like Clinton is arguing here. I'm sick of seeing pics of Spike Cohn posing in pics with BLM when their stated platform sounds like the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, and their methods of protest are antithetical to the LP non-initiation of force principle. Seeing a few porcupine shirts among the chaos made me hang my head in shame. Probably hired crisis actors or hired muscle meant to defame us, at least I hope. I couldn't disagree with you more. Black Lives Matter is a grassroots, bottom-up organization like the Tea Party. Matt Kibbe was greatly associated with the Tea Party. Mm-hmm. It didn't mean that Matt Kibbe was in charge and Freedom Works were in charge of the Tea Party at that time. There were hundreds of Tea Party groups around the country with their own different motivations. Just like there are a ton of different libertarians with their own different motivations. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of libertarians like Spike Cohn who look at Black Lives Matter and go, I don't agree with you on these 4 pieces, but I agree with you on these 3 pieces, and this is how we can advance liberty by being allies with these people. I always just kind of shake my head and like, there's going to be a lot of libertarians who are going to vote for Donald Trump, and they're going to loudly say they're voting for Donald Trump, and they're not going to suffer any penalty whatsoever. It's not disqualifying in any way. But if they were to come out and say they're voting for Joe Biden, they'd never live it down. We still, Bill Weld and Hillary Clinton never lived down. But there are plenty of libertarians who said that, you know, like Walter Block saying, you should vote in your interest and vote for Donald Trump. Well, you're willing to ally with the right, and there's a lot of people who are willing to get cozy to very grotesque people on the right, because you've made the calculation that helps advance liberty. But you're uncomfortable when somebody does it with the left, and I don't understand that. I'm willing to work with anybody that's willing to help achieve liberty. Like, the Republicans and Democrat brands and messages are largely rejected. You know, there were like 60 million people who voted for Clinton, 60 million people that voted for Trump. And then there's like 110 million people that just didn't vote, because they don't feel there's any representation. There's a huge gap in the middle of people that don't feel like they're represented. And the wasted vote is completely obliterated by exit polling every single election year. And when you go and break down like Lucy Brenton in Indianapolis and in Indiana for Senate, or the Georgia Senate race in 2018, you see in exit polling an enormous demographic difference, 1% in above 40, 10% below 40 voting for libertarians. And then you also have an enormous we don't poll from Republicans and Democrats. Like in Georgia, the libertarian candidate polled like 1% from, it was the governor's race, 1% from Kemp, 2% from, what's the lady that thinks she won? I forget her name. And then the 96% of the rest of the vote for the libertarian candidate were from independents or non-voters or reactivated voters. And so they finally see somebody that represents their viewpoint. So copying the message of a Republican or Democrat wholesale is a losing strategy and turns off our natural allies in the middle, in the center, that are willing, and the non-crazy fringe, like the non-crazy middle. Like, pandering to the far right and the far left is just a losing strategy. Harry, what were you going to say?
Yeah. I was just going to echo what you've posted online, which is, these are two dying parties. Why would we copy their message? Why would we follow their exact same dying path? You know, that's goofy. You want to grow, you want to become, the center stage mainstream, you have to do something different.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like rotary motors, so
I can't tell who this is, so it's just a Facebook user who's signaling they want Somalia. It's not that you're signaling that you want Somalia because you want Somalia. It's that you don't understand how you look, and you don't give a shit because you're not willing to talk to people that don't think and look like you. So I apologize if that's my best friend in the entire world, but that's how it comes across to people that aren't exactly like you. For God's sake, stop reading the Daily Caller and go meet some people that aren't like you. Like, it's just, when you try to explain how you come across to other people, there's a large swath of people who don't take that well and just go, I don't care what you want, I'm going to do what I want. And it's like, okay, you're just, it's so frustrating. So go ahead.
And to go to the point, like you also posted, is talking about some people are like reject your principles at your core. And it's just like, but a lot of people in the middle will reject certain principles, but they'll allow you to have those. It's when we have our walnut meetings or Liberty Chill on Fridays, we got, hard socialists that will come to our meeting, card carrying socialists, and they understand, and, but he's such a centrist. The idea that to him, socialism has to be voluntary now. It's great to watch that change, and just having conversations of talking to someone who looked completely different than I do, have completely different views, and we've met in the middle, and it's great. It's an amazing time.
Yeah, this person says, what if the non-crazy middle fundamentally rejects your core principles? Then they do. Like, they're like, you're not going to please everyone. This part of society, it doesn't matter if it's a free society, the society we live in, or a socialist system. Like, you're not going to please everybody. Just be yourself, be honest, say exactly what you think, and people will then either be with you or they won't be with you, right? Like, that's sort of where the radicals have been right in opposition to the Gary Johnson, Bob Barr campaigns. Like, just say what you really think instead of trying to lie to people. I really get that, like, this, we need to appeal to the far right, or we need to appeal to the far left, or we need to appeal, like, you're basically arguing that we need to lie to people. That's when I hear people say Joe's messaging is this or that, I go, so you're asking her to lie to the voter to make you feel better. That's not what people want. That's not what Ron Paul did.
If we believe in our ideas, and our ideas are the more superior idea and view and philosophy, then why would we want to couch that in some way to try to trick people into liking or agreeing with us? It should win just in the marketplace of ideas. We should be able to make the point, overwhelmingly show the evidence, right? And not have to try to game the system in order to get people to vote for us who don't necessarily agree with us on all things or whatever. I mean, just put it out there, and if people will listen to it and agree with it, or they won't agree with it, or they'll argue with you, and you discuss it, and you come up with, you know, some sort of proof of your thought processes by going. Like I've always said, if we do out and prove that this works, which we can do, we prove that libertarianism can work because we just ignore what the government's doing and do our own thing anyway, and we'll make it work, and people can point to that and say, "See, it's working." Then you can convince people. But, you know, that's, I don't get we can't talk that. We should go and talk to it like Joe was on Ben Shapiro's program, right? And had a conversation there. Well,
yeah, the left libertarians lost their fucking mind that Joe Jorgensen went on the largest radio show in America, second, like after Rush Limbaugh. And I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, I'm not here to grow your club. I'm not doing this to grow your club. I'm doing this so more people hear the libertarian ideology because it's incredibly freeing. Like, I'm not here to grow one faction of a movement. I'm here to grow the entire movement. Like, and I just, it gets so frustrating.
You get the message out, and, you know, go where the people will listen. And the Spike is reaching out to people who I feel a lot of times people on the left are more aligned with libertarians, except for two things. One is they don't understand the hold on a second.
How dare you?
I know it's not. I can't do anything about that one. But they don't understand that government is force. So they try to have a government solution for something. They're not clicking in their head that they're just asking for people to point a gun at their neighbor and make this happen. They just think that they're voting for a system where we agree that this is what we should do, and therefore it's written in stone that this is what we should do. Therefore, everybody will just do it. They're not making that leap to this is force. And then there are people who are saying that they're Marxists, but they're not really Marxists. They're just anti-crony capitalism. Well, guess what? I'm anti-crony capitalism. Most libertarians are anti-crony capitalism. So that's not a free market, right? So we want free market capitalism, which does not exist at the moment. So we're fighting against the current economic system that we have. Well, so are they. And I think that they just, if they knew that there was an actual difference and they thought through it, and we were able to explain that to them, then they would become libertarians.
And that's happened
They're
with
not lost causes.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. That's happened on the right with foreign policy. You know, there's a lot of discomfort for libertarians over the last 20 years trying to appeal to conservatives to be non-interventionists, despite immense pressure from the party structure not to agree with it. But Ron Paul, Rand Paul, libertarians in general are starting to succeed on that. And, you know, Donald Trump, that's one of the good things that we're going to talk about. And it's complicated. It's not good or bad. But, you know, that's where I don't get it. It's like, if you go and if Spike goes and talks to Black Lives Matter and you share the goal of everybody having more prosperity and economic opportunity, you just have different solutions. Why not persuade them that we are right? Like, there is, like, using force of any kind in any way backfires. It creates resentment and creates the opposite of what you're trying to achieve. And if you make that argument enough to both of these sides, eventually they're going to see your point, because history's moving that way. Mm-hmm. I've never had more people on the left and the right come to me than I have this year going, I see what you mean about the utilitarian breakdown. Like, it doesn't work. Government doesn't work. Force doesn't work. Now what's the solution? Right. I'm willing to lay down my sense of the Democrats can fix this or the Republicans can fix this. What do we do now? You know, and so I think appealing to messaging that creates defectors from the other two sides and reinforces the worst messaging of the two sides is not going to work. So I want to move on to just the idea of law and order, because I think this is an important part of it. Obviously, it is illegal, immoral, and wrong without any qualification for someone to destroy someone else's property. There's no but after this. I want to be very clear about that. Just because I have a different opinion on certain things than some other people, it doesn't mean that I'm not for property rights. And libertarians that have some nuance are getting really fucking sick and tired of you trying to project your bias onto those of us who are not in your club. It's an unequivocal evil to go into someone's property and just burn it down, because it just is. Like, there's no way around it. And so that's lawlessness. And that is what the right is saying we're against. We want law and order. We want the law upheld. But then when somebody doesn't follow the law but is on their side, they're not condemning that either. But also, as libertarians, there's a lot of things, including around guns, that we find to be immoral laws. So there's a lot of things, and I'm going to play this clip because of A, to give you information, but B, to kind of, as a thinking exercise, we often go, this is how the world should work. I want it to work this way, instead of realizing that this is how the world actually works, and we have to somewhat reconcile our viewpoint of as few or no laws versus where we're at now. So this is from the Advisory Opinions podcast, which is David French and Sarah Isgur of the Dispatch, which is really the only conservative site that I even look at anymore. David French is a lawyer, Sarah Isgur is a lawyer, and they're kind of breaking down Rittenhouse's legal issues and some of the factors that play in here, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
One of them is that you may not be, as a matter of law, entitled to use force to defend the property that you're defending.
That'll be a problem.
Yeah, so let me read to you the relevant Wisconsin statute. A person is privileged to defend a third person's property from real or apparent unlawful interference by another under the same conditions and by the same means as those by which the person is privileged to defend his or own property from real or apparent unlawful interference, provided, always read after provided, that the person reasonably believes the facts are such as would give the third person privilege to defend his or her own property, that his or her intervention is necessary for the protection of the third person's property, and the third person whose property the person is protecting is a member of his or her immediate family or household, or a person whose property the person has a legal duty to protect, or is a merchant, and the actor is the merchant's employee or agent. And this is an odd additional sentence. An official or adult employee or agent of a library is privileged to defend the property of the library in the manner specified in this subsection. I guess there must have been some
has a story behind it, but we'll skip over that.
So in other words, it has to be your family's property, your household's property, a property you have a legal duty to protect, or you have to be
for
an
instance,
employee.
if you're a security guard or, you've entered into some contractual relationship there.
Yep. Or you have to be a merchant, and an employee or agent of the merchant. So if I'm showing up with my AR to the local 7-Eleven to defend it, I don't have the right to do that.
Yeah, there could be some questions. For instance, if you show up to a business, the business owner is there also trying to defend his property. Can he create an agent relationship in the moment with you? Maybe. But if the business owner isn't there and you just are like, pew, pew, I'm here to defend random property that I don't know about, that is certainly not covered by what you're talking about. And it looked like that was what was going on in Kenosha last night, not referring even specifically to the video that we're going to talk about, but just in general, that some people thought that they were deputized to just go protect property, generally speaking, in downtown Kenosha.
I also want to say, break in here, that the Kenosha Guard asked the sheriff's department to deputize them so they could act as agents of the state to help them protect property. And the sheriff of the county said absolutely not. So they were denied that request.
And also here's another relevant Wisconsin statute. It is not reasonable to intentionally use force intended or likely to cause death or great bodily harm for the sole purpose of defense of one's property. So, that
which is true in every state I'm aware of. You cannot use deadly force. It's like rock, paper, scissors, and life always trumps property.
Right. Now, there are some states where you have the stand your ground. You have stand your ground status at the instant you someone sets foot on your property. You have zero duty to retreat. That's, Missouri, for example, where we had the McCloskey situation. But so here it is not reasonable to use deadly force to defend property. And if you're a third party and you're not the employer agent of the merchant, you don't have the right to defend their property. And then let's throw the other complicator here on there, which is that it's actually also a crime to point your weapon at somebody. Okay? So,
but David, we have all of those things that apply before that video starts, potentially. Yes. So you're walking around downtown Kenosha with a gun, quote unquote, defending property. You can be charged with a number of crimes based on what you're reading, David.
You're criming. If you're sitting there outside of a 7-Eleven and you point an AR at somebody to defend the 7-Eleven that is not yours and you've not been deputized to defend it, you have committed a crime. Flat out. You've committed a crime. Now, at the same time, so I also have a right to defend myself.
Right. And that's where we get into the video that we watched and the controversy around it.
Yes. So in the video we watched, a young man is running. He's got a rifle, and he's running with his rifle through protesters. He apparently trips and falls, and people yell, "Get him." At which point, 2 or 3 guys kind of cluster around him. The guy who falls opens fire. Everyone scatters. One person falls, another person staggers away injured, and then you hear other gunshots. So now here's where this gets so tangled. So if he's pointed his weapon at people unlawfully, the people he points at suddenly have a right of self-defense themselves. Okay? This is how this gets so tangled. Remember the Ahmaud Arbery shooting?
Yep.
A lot of people said, well, Arbery was attacking the person who had blocked his way. Well, as soon as, when they blocked his way, when those gentlemen blocked his way, and I use that term loosely, when those guys blocked his way and pointed a weapon at him, Arbery had a right to defend himself. So this gets really, really complicated. And it's like reasons 1 through 1,000 why you don't strap on a weapon and go head towards the riot. Yeah. You just don't do that. But, it's funny. I'm seeing a little bit on sort of this right-wing Twitter world, Sarah. I'm seeing people, how the right piles on the left that when the left won't condemn Antifa, why aren't you condemning Antifa? I'm not seeing much condemnation of the vigilantes.
And 2 people are dead who did not need to be.
Exactly.
Now, here's what I'd say about that. How do you restore law and order? By breaking the law. And then how do you deal with laws that you personally find immoral or disagreeable? You know, let me go here. Clinton rightly, and I agree with, says, boo, the castle doctrine or stand your ground is okay by me. Well, there's a process in our system, in the day and age in which we live, of changing laws or dealing with law enforcement problems. And it's a legislature. It's a legislative process. It's what we said basically about the Confederate statues. The purpose of a constitutional republic is that you don't go and tear down a Confederate statue because you want that statue down. You have to go through a process where everybody gets a say, or else it builds resentment and backlash, right? And so you're going to see resentment and backlash when people take the law into their own hands, regardless of the side, instead of dealing with it and to me, that's a road towards barbarism. You know, there's the road to serfdom, but there's also a road to barbarism. And it seems like both sides are trying to take us there by completely throwing out the process that created the country in which we live, that offered up all this economic opportunity, that offered up a system that allowed America to go from a very flawed country in its founding to a greater chance of opportunity, because that democratic republic, that constitutional republic, allows for everybody to have a voice in the system. Okay, so that's my argument for constitutionalism. Now, let's say it's an anarcho-capitalist society. You will still have courts and private police forces. You will voluntarily opt into those. And so do you want to live in a locality where everyone lives voluntarily and someone just doesn't follow the laws? Now, that's going to happen, which is why there will be adjudication in an anarcho-capitalist society. But laws and rules that are agreed upon by the group upon voluntary consent is the best way to organize things, right? Because if you're forcing law on me, then I'm going to resent you for it. If you're making me wear a mask, I'm mad about it. If I volunteer to wear a mask because you've persuaded me to wear a mask, I'm less likely to reject that notion because I've been a part of the decision-making process. And so to advocate that people should just do whatever they want in defense of property rights is a very sloppy way to run a society, be it the one we're in now or the one we're trying to work towards, because it encourages people to just not follow the rules that are agreed upon in different societies, right? So the other part of this, and I lost my train of thought. So Harry, go ahead.
So it also helps stop vigilantism, because the idea that, without some of those rules that have been officially deputized is because the communities around that area has decided that we're going to have a police force, and this police force is going to be the enforcer of the laws of the state. If without certain rules like that to stopping people from doing that, then you've got people putting on bat capes and walking around with their guns, and they're playing, and they're watching way too many Saturday morning cartoon shows or Die Hard movies and wanting to go out there and protect the public. Which I get it, I freaking get it. When you're watching when you're watching all this happening, you just kind of, you want to do something, but there are rules in place, and unless someone's life is being taken, sometimes you just got to stand back. What do you think, Rhinehold? Am I wrong?
Well, I mean, so the question is what's the answer there? And I don't know, what you do in that point, right? So that's part of the problem is, we're talking about a society. Let's say we're in an anarcho-capitalist society, and there's this idea of people. You're going to have somebody who tries to take over who wants more, who wants somebody else's stuff. That's why we have theft now. I mean, there's somebody's going to try to do that, and there's got to be a mechanism in place to stop that from happening. And when you agree upon that mechanism, you're agreeing upon basically a system of government, right? And we're not going to call it government. It's going to be a voluntary anarcho-capitalist system, but you still have to have rules in place in order for there to be a functional society so people can operate with each other in some sort of method that they're not having to strap and be carrying every second of every day in order to defend themselves from all the people who want to try and stop them. And they're going to get overwhelmed by a mob. And then what do you do then? So it's better to come together and communicate and come up with solutions on how we think things should go, and try to follow that, as opposed to trying to force people to do, because that's the problem with human nature. And so there's a lot of these different philosophies that just ignore human nature. Socialism is one of them, right? Communism. But sometimes I wonder about libertarianism too, because they try to pretend like if we just let everybody be, they're all going to make the right decision. And we see that that's not the case. We know that that's not the case. Certain people are going to try to game the system or take advantage of other people, right? If you have private police force and you have them policing things like that, there's nothing to stop them from, being bought out by rich business interests, right? That'll happen. I mean, you can go back and look at the private police force in the 1800s, and I can't remember, for some reason, I can't remember the name of it. The Pinkertons, right? So the Pinkertons were a private police force, but they ended up working for businesses and not caring about individual rights and going out and doing some things that were really bad. So it becomes, it's hard to say that it's got to be all this way or all that way. People have to come together and come to an agreement on some of this stuff, right? And we have to accept that.
Yeah. And the other part, and I'm genuinely asking a question here, and I wonder if somebody could write in on this, because so we can talk about it next week. In terms of property rights, is it a violation of property rights if you're defending property that the property owner doesn't want you to defend? So if, let's say, I'm guarding a CVS and the CVS does not want me on their property, is that a violation? But the mentality is I'm there to protect their property, so I have the moral good, but you haven't cooperated with that property owner. So I wonder if somebody could write in and give me a thought on that. And I would just say, she said in law, life trumps property. How many lives is a CVS worth? So, I mean, I just look at this, and Ryan Lindsay is very much more on the left, doesn't really cut into property rights much, and that's where he kind of goes, how many people is worth, how many lives is CVS worth? And I thought that was an interesting question to ask yourself, just to kind of go through some of the comments here. Wes says, if you have rules, you have to have enforcement and consequences, or they are invalid. You're absolutely right. And in a libertarian society, there is enforcement of the rules. So that does exist. It's just that you don't have a monopoly on violence. You don't have a monopoly on the police force. So if the police force is doing things that you find to be egregious, you can hire another police force, and the perpetrators of the violation of the rights that have been pre-established, they will suffer consequences, and there's no qualified immunity in a libertarian society, because you're right, consequences and incentives are at the root of everything. Aggression is a violation of natural law, writes Christopher Brown. Neoconservatives and neoliberals have advocated for so long that it has become accepted practice in the minds of people. Just because it is accepted does not make it right. And you're right. When adults look to violence as the solution for every problem, how can we be shocked that a 17-year-old sees violence as the appropriate tool to fight other people who see violence as an effective tool? Let's see. Clinton says, agreed, libertarianism's notion is that people are basically good and trustworthy, clashes with my worldview as a Christian minister, but more important to this discussion, it just isn't honest. I don't agree with that. I don't think that libertarianism makes the assumption that every person is good. There's a foundational book that everybody ought to read. It's called Conflict of Visions by Thomas Sowell, where he talks about constrained and unconstrained. There is a certain view in the world that government can perfect man, and that if we have just the right technical policies, you can make people, you can nudge them into being well-behaving people, and I don't believe that. I'm a libertarian because I'm a Christian, too, who believes that we're all fallen. Every person is imperfect. Every person is complicated and isn't good or bad. They're just difficult. I just watched The Green Book. Amazing movie, loved it. And one of the characters is found out to be gay, and another character looks at him and goes, I was a bouncer in New York City in nightclubs. I know the world's a complicated place. And it doesn't make that one of either, that's sort of the reaction that we all ought to have to everyone. And so what libertarianism does is it says everybody is imperfect, so let's create a solution that works with that imperfectness, where everybody gets a voice, everybody gets to agree, and we stop forcing people into decisions that they had no a say in, because we want to lessen resentment. And the less violent solutions, like you see in this whole chain of events, it's violence begets violence, begets violence, begets violence, and then so we're arguing step 5 in the begetting of violence. And so if we go back and work our way back, there's going to be murder, and there's going to be chaos, and there's going to be rioting in libertarian societies. There will just be less of it because there's more prosperity and more economic opportunity, and people have more of a say in the rules. It's not a utopian society that perfects man and erases their warts. It designs systems that better accommodate that fallen nature.
That's the thing that I want to touch on too when you're talking about better prosperity for everybody. If you look at what's going on now, and then you graph out what's been happening with wealth in this country, where the top 5% are getting wealthier and wealthier, and everybody else is kind of middling around and having to fight harder to even the middle class is fighting harder to kind of keep things going and make do. That's where all these frustrations and things start bubbling up. Yep. That's the problem with the crony capitalist system we have, is that we're not allowing that real free market to cover the separations in wealth. It doesn't work. Those people are being protected by the political elites to continue making more money. Get that money in the stock market. Just pop the stock market up. That's not the economy. The stock market is not the economy. And when you start seeing that huge disparity start to pop up, that's when you start seeing the frustrations really start building.
Okay, let's thank our patrons. Clinton writes, longtime fan, first-time live listener, really enjoy the way you address things with reason and discussion, even when you think I'm wrong. It's fair, honest, and interesting. I'll try to recruit more listeners, and we thank you so much. And this is only made possible by our patrons. We'd love for you to join our Patreon and keep supporting us. We are trying to lead the way in doing something different. Part of my career as a broadcaster is really trying to help provide examples of what a libertarian society ought to look like, how we ought to reconcile each other's worldviews and come together and show that it is possible to have mutual respect for each other. And if you support that, if you support independent thinking and different ways of doing things, then we'd love for you to join our Patreon. I know it's difficult, and listen, I get letters every single day and notes from people who say that they appreciate the way that we try to approach things. I feel the pressure all the time, like all the rest of you. Float this way, float that way, choose a team. It is incredibly difficult to be independent-minded and principled in a time when everybody's losing their mind. Mm-hmm. If everybody's losing your mind, it doesn't mean that you have to go along with them. And just want you to know that there are independent thinkers out there, and we are supported by them. We are supported by people like you, and we are especially supported by our $100 a month patrons, of which Rhinehold is. Thank you, Rhinehold. Matthew Durbin, Christy Avery, who had a birthday this week. Christy Avery, the best person on the planet. I can't get into why, but she is so loved by everybody in We Are Libertarians and also me. Jeff Bennett, Jason Doolittle, Ed Brehab, and Brad Tracy and Anthony Meyer. Thank you all so much for helping us continue to do what we do. Let's go on to Donald Trump's record. We're at an hour, Should we just cut?
Say what happened at 20 minutes.
Cut bait and should we cut bait and start a second episode, or do this next week, or keep going? What do you guys think?
Well, I think what your idea of what we wanted to do next week is interesting too. I'd like to kind of touch on that.
All right, let's keep going then.
So, yeah, let's go ahead and do. I think we can finish up Donald Trump. I mean,
yeah.
Hopefully he is finished up, but that's another story.
All right, so Rhinehold exposing his bias. We're going to start with we're going to start where we left off, which was Donald Trump's executive orders. Everybody knows how he felt about Barack Obama's executive orders. We hated it. Again, going back to that legislative process, there is no such thing as co-equal branches of government. That is BS. The Congress is the superior branch because of two reasons. They were given the power of the purse, spending bills initiate in the House, and they were also given oversight roles in a way that the other two were not. And so they have an extra piece, and so they're technically the more powerful branch. The co-equal branch was like a 20th century invention to try and help with court stacking, I think. But since entering office, now our problem with executive orders is that it's governing by diktat. It's not it's legislating where they have the president doesn't have that power to legislate. But this power was basically taken by Washington from the very beginning. And Barack Obama, George Bush, then Barack Obama, and then now Donald Trump have all helped accelerate that process and increase the cult of the presidency. So since entering office, Donald Trump has signed 176 executive orders. In 2017, it was 55. In 2018, it was 37. In 2019, it was 45. And in 2020, so far, it's been 44. So going back to 2017, some of the first executive orders, 13765. Now, this was the first EO signed by Trump on January 20th, and it set out interim procedures in anticipation of the repeal of Obamacare. To have dreams. The order was designed to weaken regulations and procedures associated with the enforcement of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. In effect, in February 2017, it was reported that the IRS would not require tax filers to state whether they have compliant insurance, allowing them to avoid the penalty. Talked about insurance in the last episode, so you can hear our opinions on all that. Same goes with immigration in the next one. His next executive order was 13767, border security, immigration, and enforcement. And we're not going to talk about all 176. We're just going to give you some of the highlights. And like I've said, hey, raise your hand if you two want to mention anything, or else I'll just kind of keep rolling through these facts. This was the border security and immigration enforcement improvements. The order was aimed at fulfilling one of those campaign promises, enhancing border security, by directing federal funding to construction of a wall along the Mexico-U.S. border. It instructed the Secretary of Homeland Security to prepare congressional budget requests for the wall and to, quote, end abuse of parole and asylum provisions that complicate the removal of undocumented immigrants. Now, part of the order called for hiring 5,000 more Border Patrol agents, building facilities to hold undocumented immigrants, and ending catch and release protocols. The next one was, go ahead, Rhinehold. I saw your mouth move. You wanted to jump.
Yeah, I was going to say something. That was the one thing too. The ending of the catch and release thing. Mm-hmm. That's really where we get into the zero tolerance policy for asylum seekers, right? So that's people are talking about. Well, the cages came from Obama, but Obama was basically taking people who were considered to be threats. So about 5 to 10% of the people seeking asylum, those people would be kind of caged up, and the rest of them would be given a court date to come back for their hearing, and then given temporary status to go in and kind of function in the society while we do that. And that's what he stopped. So that's why the explosion of the people who were in those facilities expanded so great, was that executive order where we stopped that function. EO
13768, enhancing public safety in the interior of the United States. The order outlined changes to a few immigration policies, but most notably, it stripped federal grant money to so-called sanctuary cities. In addition, the Secretary of Homeland Security was ordered to hire 10,000 more immigration officers, create a publicly available weekly list of crimes committed by undocumented immigrants, and review previous immigration policies. We talked about the problem with sanctuary cities is that it's totally at Donald Trump's discretion who he can and cannot and will not fund. That's not how any of this is supposed to work. There's supposed to be representation that works on the funding. It's not supposed to be on the whims of a single person. The entire point of the Senate basically was to cool the passions of the House, where it would be easily electable, high turnover, lots of representatives. That's where the whims and passions of the moment work themselves out in the Congress. Then they're cooled by the Senate. And if it makes it through that, then the president would sign it. And the reason for these 3 steps in terms of lawmaking is that there weren't supposed to be so many laws. And so that's why America was prosperous until there were so many laws, especially after the 60s.
Right. Yeah. That's, get to the point like ignorance of the law is no excuse. It's kind of hard if you have so many freaking laws.
Pejoratively, the next one is called the Muslim ban, EO 13769. Nice. Protecting the nation from foreign terrorist entry into the United States, except for the extent to which it was blocked by various courts. It was in effect from January 27, 2017 to March 6, when it was superseded by EO 13780. The EO lowered the number of refugees admitted into the U.S. in 2017 to 50,000. It also suspended the U.S. refugees admission program for 120 days, suspended the entry of Syrian refugees indefinitely, directed some cabinet secretaries to suspend entry to those whose country do not meet adjudication standards under U.S. immigration law for 90 days, and included exceptions on a case-by-case basis. The DHS listed the countries as Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen, which they also went on to add Chad, which is a major ally in the fight in the war on terror. More than 700 travelers were detained, and up to 60,000 visas were provisionally revoked. One of the stunning things about this past convention, I barely watched any of it. I watched half of the first night of the Republicans, because I was busy during the week of the Democrats, and so I didn't watch many of it. I watched like Kamala's speech and here and there, and Obama. And then I tried to watch the RNC, and I was just like, I can't take the fear-mongering. I don't want to watch any of this infomercial stuff. But the coverage of it, when people say Donald Trump is a gaslighter, it's best illustrated by this past convention. Because there hasn't been a president in the modern era that has done more to limit illegal immigration. Okay. Not on favor, but I get it. Like we've said forever, enforce the law on the books, right? Whatever. He's done so much to limit legal immigration, especially through the pandemic, and then has the gall to just completely pretend that none of that happened the past 4 years. And act like he had the first night he had a guy talking, he had immigrants talking about how they've prospered under Donald Trump and Donald Trump's America. And I'm just like, are people buying this? Like, are people really buying into the fact that this person just spent 4 years gutting legal immigration, revoking naturalizations, like every month there's a new way to ratchet down on immigration, and then he comes out. It's literally like Donald Trump doesn't care about immigrants or immigration. Donald Trump he thinks that if he does his pageantry in a certain way, it will neutralize the argument of the other side. Because look, he had this guy speak at the convention. Look, he had that guy say that nice things about him. He literally thinks that we're that dumb enough to fall for it. Now, some of us in this country are, but then there are those of us who are not.
My immigrant friend here, I have an immigrant friend, so why are you thinking that I'm against immigration?
Yeah, like,
but the other thing too
is tokenization. I mean, let's just call it what it is. Yeah,
yeah. He highlights his own point against him when he's like, "Look at how these immigrants have prospered in our America." I'm like, great. Why don't we let more people in so more people can prosper?
Right.
Why are you limiting that? I don't understand. So
Well, he's not limiting. He just wants legal immigration. He saw all the legal immigrants he brought into the see them. They're legal,
Right?
Granted, the
except that
hoops
he's
got
making
bigger.
it harder to be legal. He's
Oh.
making it impossible to be legal. If you look
But
at the
they're
law,
still
the
legal.
immigration laws, oh my god,
But
you
they're
can't do it
legal.
anymore.
I know. Yeah. It's
They're
it's
human
an
beings.
argument like out here in Trump country. That's all I hear is like, well, we just want legal immigration.
Yeah, we just want to follow the laws. I'm like, yeah, but so
What
let's
are
change
those?
the laws so that we get rid of this stuff. Oh no, we can't do that. Well, why not?
Right.
Yeah, that's
And it's always like those, and it really feels like weird because it is the people here, the bubble, the not the bubble, what is it, the border bubble that says that, and everyone else around the borders actually either have customers on one side or the other side of this, the imaginary line called the border. They're just, well, I just want to make it easier to go back and forth and have workers and customers and do everything go back and forth. This other crap is just annoying.
On to the next one, EO 13780, protecting the nation from foreign terrorist entry into the U.S. in March 6, 2017. This was Travel Ban 2.0, revoked and replaced the other one because of court challenges. The order revised Trump's original immigration ban, which was hit with dozens of lawsuits and blocked by a federal judge in Washington state. As of the most recent revision in February 2020, travel to the U.S. is banned by all nations of North Korea and Syria, by the nationals of Iran except on student or exchange visitor visas, nationals of Libya and Yemen on immigrant, tourist, or business visas, nationals of Eritrea, Kyrgyzstan, Myanmar, Nigeria, and Somalia on immigrant visas, by nationals of Sudan and Tanzania on diversity visas, and by some government officials of Venezuela. The Supreme Court upheld the most recent version of the travel ban on June 6, 2018. EO 13813, promoting healthcare choice and competition, October 12, 2017, known as the Trump Care Executive Order. It directed federal agencies to modify how patient protection and basically Obamacare is implemented. The order included a directive to federal agencies to end rules forbidding employers from using HRAs to pay individual insurance premiums. It aimed to widen the use of HRAs, which I believe are those health savings accounts? Somebody look that up real quick. It should have had that in my 23 pages of show notes. But by the way, thanks to Sam Schultz for these great show notes, our lead researcher here at We're Libertarians, and all this stuff is available in a PDF that you can go grab in the show notes. So when you're talking to your friends and you're like, yeah, he has done all these executive orders, look at this, page 8. It sought to allow small businesses more leeway to group together when providing or purchasing insurance, increase the availability and duration of short-term health insurance plans. In a separate announcement, Trump said he would end subsidies to health insurance companies that sell to low-income consumers through state health insurance marketplaces. Trump stated in a press conference that reporters no longer refer to Obamacare because it's gone. There is no such thing as Obamacare anymore. Okay.
Sweet.
From 2018, EO 13841, affording Congress an opportunity to address family separation. The order restricts family separation but maintains many of the key components of the administration's immigration policy. The order instructs DHS to maintain custody of parents and children jointly. If you remember the child border separation brouhaha. It also instructed the Justice Department to attempt to overturn the Flores Agreement, which limited the time for holding children and families with children to 20 days, allowing children to be detained indefinitely. Donald Trump wanted children of immigrants to be detained indefinitely. Okay. Let's highlight 2020. EO 13925, preventing online censorship. Remember this? He was signed to direct regulatory action at Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. The EO asserts that media companies that edit content apart from restricting posts that are violent, obscene, or harassing as outlined in the Good Samaritan Clause are then engaged in editorial conduct and may forfeit any safe harbor protection granted. HRA, by the way, does not roll over at the end of the year. HSA does. So it is like a thank you, anonymous Facebook user. Doesn't that seem like a violation of property rights when the president starts telling, now he's amending code, but at the same time, like, you're getting all up in their business, Donald Trump? Like, what right does the president have to mess with the property of Mark Zuckerberg? Seems like a contradiction.
It's just more because it's not really all right. That one's complicated and can be expanded upon because it's a lot of the social media platforms are trying to say that they are just a platform or a service or something like that, but they are the way they have been and continue to ban or different habits on them. Probably they've been more of a publication than they have just an arbitrary, just like, no, it's just our site. So they just fall under weird different regulations at that point.
Go ahead.
It's trying to put something in place that doesn't exist. So this idea that there's a publisher platform, that sort of thing, those differences were gotten rid of with 230. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to gut it and put it back in place so that he can then try to dictate what they can and can't do. And this is, instead of giving them the protections to do that. So if what he puts into place were to actually fall and they were to get rid of 230, as it were, basically most of the social media platforms we have right now would shut down. There'd be no way they could function.
All right, I am officially for ending Section 230. Listen, I used to fear EMPs, but the internet was a mistake. All of this was a mistake. Let's get rid of them. Section 230 was carved in for user-generated content. So, one of the problems with the early days of the internet was comment sections. Who is responsible? Who's legally responsible? If somebody posts in a comment section or on AOL, I believe this is passed in 96, part of the Telecom Act. If I post a meme and it's a copyrighted picture, as almost all of them are, who bears the legal responsibility for that if the copyright owner wants to sue? And so what Section 230 did is it said you get protection from what people do on your platform in terms of some of this stuff.
And not just that, it also protected them from saying, okay, we want to police those comments. So we want to delete the ones we find offensive. The minute you do that, you become an editor, you become a publisher, you fell into the other category where then you were responsible for everything else that happened on that site.
Right.
So that's where that kind of came in. So if they were to get rid of it, then they would either have to let no moderation of any kind happen, or they have to be responsible for everything that happens by a new user on that site, one way or the other. And in both cases, I think most businesses would just say, we're not involved. We're not interested in it.
Yeah. Here's the thing that they don't understand is the second that you revoke 230 and you're forcing censorship on these platforms, government is forcing censorship, Donald Trump and their crowd will be the first taken off. If you don't, when the government, again, back to our principle of government, the number one principle is that prohibition, government action of any kind creates backlash and resentment. And so if you are directing liberal social media outlets as a Republican president, what they can and can't do, and you've forced their hand on copyright, you're the first one gone, not Joe Biden. So it's the problem with populists is that populists don't understand the government that they're talking about. Right. Populists don't understand how any of the law works. They don't care about the law. I don't care what the law says. Just get out there with your AR and protect this. I don't care what the law says. Those are fake scientists anyways. I can do what I want. The populist just does whatever feels right in the moment and has no real, this is my argument with a lot of the Kenosha stuff. What's the long-term view, right? Stop arguing about the moment. Let's look at what led up to that and what are the long-term consequences of how we act going forward. And removing Section 230 feels good right now, but what are the long-term consequences in terms of free speech and censorship? If you do what they want to do, you probably make the problem worse if you really play it out. So, again, libertarians should not be siding with the greater censor, which is the government, to fight the lesser censor, which is a private business that will be out of business in 10 to 20 years.
Correct.
Because of creative destruction.
Correct. Yeah. That's why I said this issue is very complicated because I think the best thing the government probably could do is, if they really feel like the size or political speech is being censored, is one, just take a lot of that power that those social media companies have and just, I'm sorry, barring your workers, your federal employees from just having to use walled garden social media networks. So forcing them up and only using federated code. So if you're a government employee, you can't use Twitter for any official messages. Get off. Remove. So
the EO, going back to some of the stuff, the EO asserts that media companies that edit content apart from restricting posts that are violent, obscene, or harassing, as outlined in the, quote, Good Samaritan Clause, are then, quote, engaged in editorial conduct and may forfeit any safe harbor protection granted. I know I read that before. I'm sorry. The goal of the EO is to remove the Section 230 protections from such platforms, thus leaving them liable for content, which essentially cannibalizes them due to lawsuits. In June 2020, the Center for Democracy and Technology filed lawsuit seeking preliminary and permanent injunction from the EO from being enforced, asserting that the EO created a chilling effect on free speech, since it puts all hosts of third-party content on notice that content moderation decisions with which the government disagrees could produce such penalties and retributive actions, including stripping them of Section 230 protections. It basically, instead of the private business owner deciding what is or is not allowed on that property, the government is in charge. I don't see how that's a win for liberty in any way. And listen,
it's funny, those are the same people who are saying we should be protecting private property at all costs, yet they're wanting to strip the private property rights of these individuals that they disagree with, and they want to violate the private property rights of people who say that they want masks to be worn in their stores. You have these, people say private property until it affects their political view, then we don't care about private property.
You know what's so interesting about this specific topic is, if you're consistent on something and everyone else isn't, your position starts to shift. So like, I was one of the first on the wall when Alex Jones was banned. There wasn't any other libertarian voice going, this is a problem and we shouldn't be doing it. Because I guarantee you, go back and listen to our episodes on this in 2017. Harry, you were alive. Property rights, they can do whatever they want, property rights. And I was like, yes, it is their property. But do you want them censoring political speech? Because once you open that door, it's only going to make it worse. They're only, Zuckerberg's under attack right now for Kenosha stuff. Like, it's never ending, right? You don't want political speech being decided. And that's where I lay all of the blame on the Trump-Russia, Hillary Clinton blaming big tech, because Hillary Clinton couldn't accept that she lost her race. She had to blame big tech for it. And so then, Senator Mark Warner was putting pressure on these companies to self-regulate, or else he was going to do it, which we opposed at the time. And as users of these platforms, we have every right to speak up and say, we don't want you to censor us. As a consumer of your product, I don't want you censoring my speech. You want Plandemic on Facebook because then it can be challenged by other people. When you send Plandemic over to Gab or whatever, you then lose the ability to have a dialogue. And that's why these third-party free speech platforms often don't work, is because they just attract the people who are saying stuff that nobody wants to hear because it's conspiratorial or it's violent or aggressive or whatever. And so we were advocating for free speech principles to be upheld by big tech all along, right? Mm-hmm. Saying that free speech is possibly a greater principle than property rights, not through government action, but in terms of, I'm a consumer and I can say what I want. I want free speech on this platform. And now the people who are making the property rights argument at me are making the free speech argument, and property rights don't matter because Trump should regulate them because this is outrageous. And you go, wait a minute. How did I go from like I was being called a right-wing Nazi for defending Alex Jones, and now I'm like a left-wing Salon.com writer because you people have decided that you want to use the government to censor. It's so odd how things have shift so quickly, if you just stick to one location. So I don't get it. Moving on, let's talk about DACA. Let's revisit some of that real quick before we go on to foreign policy. DACA. In June, the Supreme Court blocked the Trump administration's move to end DACA, which is basically kids who were born. Explain DACA, Rhinehold.
So basically, it gave protections to people who are born here by illegal immigrants. So the idea was if we just start deporting all the illegal immigrants, we're going to report their kids as well. So the notion was that these people were born here, therefore they're Americans. People are trying to argue that they're not because they were by illegal parents, which isn't the case, as is not the law, but they were still wanting to get to deport the children of the illegal immigrants who had no say in the matter on where they were born or why they were here, and trying to send them back to a country they've never been in. Right. To say that that's their home was unconscionable. So they put in protections to say we can't deport those people currently until we figure out a better solution or legislate this in some way, and it just never got done. So it's still in place. And that's what they're arguing about now, is the fact that it still exists, and it was technically unconstitutional to implement DACA because it was an executive order overriding the what Congress had the power to dictate. But now we're trying to get rid of it using executive order, which is, again, it's all a big mess on that. It's, yeah, that's the basics of it, I guess.
Yeah, and it was sad to watch people them talk about trying to get rid of these dreamers. And the idea of sending someone to a country or a place that they've never been before, or even sometimes even don't even speak the language or even know the culture. It's just no. We add to consider the idea. It's like, well, you've invested in these kids by educating them and feeding, and last time feeding them, you've already invested your theft money, your tax money into these kids. Why would you send them away? You've invested so much.
Plus, they're actually paying back more in taxes because they're so prosperous and bringing so much money into the economy. If we were to get rid of the dreamers, I guess there was like $800 billion would be pulled out of the economy. Right. So they're putting more back than we ever invested in taxes for schooling and all that stuff, right? Which is why people advocate doing that, whether we agree with it or not. I mean, that's the thought processes. So why would you want to get rid of those people who are making up a large section of your economy?
So thank you for covering. I had to get a drink of water and pick my nose. I was like, my nose was itching so bad, and I wasn't going to do it on camera. I was like, DACA, go. In June 2012, the Obama administration creates DACA. Trump kicked off his campaign taking aim at DACA, vowing to, quote, immediately terminate President Obama's illegal executive order on immigration immediately. In his presidential announcement speech on June 16th, 2015, and again during an August 31st rally in Arizona. On September 5th, 2017, Trump officially ordered an end to DACA, giving Congress 6 months to pass a bill to save the policy. As part of the phase-out, the administration planned to adjudicate on a case-by-case basis applications filed by September 5th and reject any new request filed after that date. Individuals who already had DACA protection, it was expiring March 5th, 2018, and would be able to apply for renewal by October 5th, 2017. Now, the stalemate over DACA came to a head in January 2018 when a bipartisan group of senators presented a compromise immigration deal that would protect DACA participants as part of the country's annual budget legislation. But Trump rejected the package and the government shut down for the longest period in history. Why are we having all these people from shithole countries come here? Trump is reported saying during a January 11th meeting to strike a deal for DACA recipients. Trump's initial 2017 move to end the policy was met with legal challenges from federal lower court judges ruling against the Trump administration on 3 occasions, which led to Trump to announce his appeal to the Supreme Court on January 16, 2018. In a June decision, the Supreme Court maintained the status quo. The Trump administration must now either give up on DACA or provide a lower court with a more robust justification for ending the program. We do not decide whether DACA or its recession are sound policies, Judge Roberts wrote. The wisdom of those decisions is none of our concern. Here we address only whether the administration complied with the procedural requirements in the law that insist on a reasonable explanation for its now, that is a shield for those undocumented immigrants brought to the U.S. So that is what is going on. Yep. Now, let's talk about foreign policy. I know Rhinehold's going to disagree with this, but in terms of all of Donald Trump's official policies, this is probably where he's the best. I don't know if Donald Trump is the best on this stuff because he's too incompetent to start a war, because he certainly would if he could, or if he genuinely believes what he says, that he doesn't want to start new wars. But then again, does he believe anything? I don't think so. But I think a lot of this may just be a lot of his foreign policy record is it's not as bad as Joe Biden's. But is the era of interventionism over? Harry, you're shaking your head. Why not?
No, I'm in your camp of I think he just doesn't know how.
He tried. He tried the best as he could to try to get a war with Iran, and Iran didn't bite.
Right. Because he probably
Iran's the one that didn't bite on that one, not the United States.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's just he probably didn't fill out the correct form, so Iran knew they were supposed to bite, so they knew they would get more money and more, and the CIA would give them more armament, allegedly, to fight. Or maybe he didn't send enough ammo to Iran, allegedly, so they could fight back. Who knows? Somewhere there was a form not filled out as an Illuminati meeting. So yeah. I just think it's just too incompetent. Can't start one.
So let's start going through his record. Let's start with North Korea. Trump has met with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un twice, in Hanoi in February 2019 and the DMZ last summer. Trump claimed his bold new diplomacy could result in tremendous things for U.S.-North Korean relations. Trump's relations have yet to produce any concessions that would put North Korea on a path to denuclearization. Kim has continued to test short-range missiles and other weapons. Any thoughts on North Korea?
Yeah, Trump was trying to say he deserved the Nobel Peace Prize for what he did in Korea, and he has actually done absolutely nothing in Korea. Nothing has been accomplished.
He's probably given Kim Jong-un more time to build nuclear weapons, which is not necessarily a win for liberty, having a dictator with nuclear weapons. But
he got them to talk to, like, they're going to reconcile North Korea and South Korea were going to come back together again. And then North Korea pretty much shot that in the foot, right? I mean, they're saying things to keep themselves going, to keep themselves getting interest from these foreign foreign entities, and to keep themselves just afloat. And they're just passing the ball down the line, and they're never accomplishing anything. This is the way it's going to be until people start changing the way we deal with that situation.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good point, Harry.
I'm just going to say the easiest way to deal with the North Korea situation is just open up a bunch of Korean barbecue shops right on the border and just price of admission, just drop your guns here.
That's right.
That's me.
Quote, not ending the wars is one thing that he is often credited for or not. Throughout his time as president, Trump escalated U.S. military involvement in foreign conflicts. He did it in Somalia. A surge in American airstrikes over the last 4 months of 2018 pushed the annual death toll of suspected Shabab fighters in Somalia to the third record high in 3 years. In 2018, strikes killed 326 people in 47 disclosed acts, according to the Defense Department. During January and February of 2019, the U.S. Africa Command reported killing 225 people in 24 strikes in Somalia. Africa Command maintains that its death toll includes only Shabab militants, even though the group claims regularly that civilians were also killed. A March 2016 report by Amnesty International found that at least 14 civilians were killed in just 5 of more than 70 airstrikes the U.S. carried out in Somalia since early 2017. The U.S. military disputes the report, saying none of those strikes resulted in any civilian casualties. The Trump administration has more than doubled the pace of strikes from the Obama years, ordering 35 strikes in 2017 and 45 in 2018. Soon after taking office, Trump declared parts of Somalia areas active hostility, giving the military greater latitude to carry out strikes. This is just one highlighted example of his drone usage. Republicans often like to point out that Barack Obama, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, was the drone warrior, and Trump has almost doubled the drone strikes. And so from a non-interventionist point of view, why are drone strikes problematic? Let me put on my John Stossel hat, Rhinehold and Harry. When you use drones to attack foreign adversaries that want to do harm to the United States, isn't that much cleaner than using fighter jets or ground troops? Why are drone strikes a problem?
The drone strikes are the problem because it still bombs indiscriminately. You may see one target that you have that they think someone's there, but they bomb it. The other problem is the double tap drone strike. It's when the drone strike drones, people rush in to help, and then you drone it, and then you strike it again. And that's all people know about drones is the U.S. just bombs you. Things you don't see in the sky just come down and just bombs you.
Yeah, I don't know if it's any better or worse than regular bombing, but it's still bombing. And one of the stats that I don't think was included in that is the fact that last year the United States killed more civilians in Afghanistan than the Taliban did.
Yep. Because
we're just bombing. We're not taking the care to watch what we're bombing and making sure that. So let's say you're going to go and target a certain individual or a certain group of people. They're not making sure with people on the ground and with good intelligence, which we know that this president doesn't really care about intelligence, his briefings or anything else.
I'm the most intelligent. I don't know what you're saying. I have the best words.
But then now we're killing even more civilians than the Taliban, who are supposed to be fighting because they're killing civilians. I mean, that's just crazy to me. And one thing that's come clear in all of these discussions of all of these topics is that all the things that we were upset about Obama on, and even Trump was upset about Obama on, he's done bigger. He's gone huge.
It's better.
It's this thing. He's bigger and better. So he's put more people in detention camps. He's deported more people. He's killed more people through bombing. Mm-hmm. He's doing all of the. He's fighting more tariff wars. I mean, when we talk about foreign policy, we end up talking about wars, but foreign policy is more than just wars too. It's how you're interacting.
Sanctions, trade deals, thing. Yeah.
Right. If you take a look at what happened here, we've got Iran, who he wanted to bomb into oblivion because they were interfering with shipping trade routes. Right. Supposedly, Iran placed some bombs on a ship that wasn't even a United States ship, and put some holes in it and damaged some property and caused some issues there. Trump wants to bomb them into oblivion over it. But Russia is putting bounties on the heads of American soldiers, and he goes, whatever.
Yeah, no, like that. the reality is Donald Trump has no principles. Like, so to call Donald Trump a non-interventionist is like calling Donald Trump a constitutionalist, or calling Donald Trump a moralist, or calling Donald Trump ethical, or calling Donald Trump a low tax cutter. Like, he doesn't believe anything, and so you, with a person like that who is largely transactional, you get some wins, but you also get some losses, you know. And he's my pushback on the idea that he is a non-interventionist. It's just not the case. Like, if Donald Trump were presented with the opportunity to go to war and he felt that it was in his interest, he would absolutely do it. Is he just doesn't feel that it is in his interest, and he doesn't feel that it is, you know, I mean, he's willing to drop the mother of all bombs, the Moabs. He's willing to assassinate Soleimani. He's willing to flirt with the line of, you know, war. He's just he is less interventionist. He does not practice the Wilsonian view of war and intervention that George W. Bush practiced. And so that is a positive, right? Like, I'm going to give credit where credit is due. But he's not.
You also know that he would.
He's not what we would like him to be, or how libertarians would practice foreign policy.
Right. We also know that even though the interventionalists and the Wilsonians and Bush, they intervened in other countries in a way, like the neocons. You know, they're trying to create peace throughout the world through military might and American superiority and blah 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 blah. Right. Yeah. But that's at least a principle, or a thought process. It's not, well, my polls are lagging and these guys did something I didn't like, so I'm just going to discriminately bomb them today, without thinking about the consequences of what he's doing, without thinking about the impact it will have, or even trying to make the case for it. He just says, that's what I want to do today.
Yeah, no, he's very, 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 very comfortable with the mindset of militarization. He has the domestic policy of John McCain's foreign policy, right? Like, he treats American citizens like John McCain treated Syrians, right? So if he had the opportunity to treat other nations like he wants to treat leftists, he would, you know. And that's where I would warn my fellow libertarians: don't treat your fellow citizens like John McCain treated Iraqis. Now, Rand Paul went to bat and gave a speech for him at the RNC this week, and he said, "I flew with him to Dover Air Force Base to honor 2 soldiers whose remains were coming home from Afghanistan. I will never forget that evening. I can tell you the president not only felt the pain of these families, but the president is committed to ending this war." He continues, "President Trump is the first president in a generation to seek to end war rather than start one. He intends to end the war in Afghanistan. He is bringing our men and women home." He announced today before the show, I read that he was bringing a third of U.S. troops home from Iraq, 3,500 troops. Great.
Iraq? I thought we were out of Iraq.
I know. I thought we were too, but
I missed that memo then, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, and here's where I go back to, like, Barack Obama had the inclination to end war too. He did not start any major wars, but are the people who are saying we should single issue voters on foreign policy, of which a lot of the Ron Paul crowd is from, will tell you that Donald Trump is the only logical choice because he never started any major wars. Neither did Barack Obama, and Joe Biden will not either. Like, the mistake of Iraq is so permanently baked into the American populace that it will be generations before they ever support any kind of war like that, which is why the warfare state has settled on things like drones and asymmetrical warfare, and we're gonna go fight in Syria, but we're not gonna have our hands on it. We're gonna fund other groups. That's the same kind of foreign policy as Ronald Reagan, as Bill Clinton, as Barack Obama. Has he done it to a lesser degree? Absolutely. But he's done the same sorts of asymmetrical light warfare that every other president has done, except George W. Bush, who was, Mr. Kill a Million Iraqis because of bullshit propaganda. So
I also believe too, if we look at the numbers, and I may be wrong on this, but is my understanding that let's say he brings home a third of the people that are in Afghanistan. That's still more than there were there when he took office.
Yeah.
He put more people in Afghanistan. So he's bringing home people that he sent there. Not, that's the thing, is he's trying to win to claim victory or all this stuff on things that has been manipulated to make it look a certain way, but the reality of it is different.
As Matthew Meyer, great comments, he added 14,000 troops to the Middle East in 2019. Trump puts himself first, not the country, and says his foreign policy is worse than Biden's. Trump's foreign policy is losing a tariff war, causing farm bankruptcies to rise, and putting America manufacturing into a recession. Great points, Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just because Rand Paul is willing to go out and give a speech, it doesn't mean that you should give Trump a pass, I guess is what we're saying. So, there are definite wins towards a non-interventionist policy here, which is why Rand Paul is willing to give that speech. But Rand Paul, going back to our earlier discussion about Kenosha and some of the things we were talking about there, understands the calculation of, I'll do this, I'll do these things because then I have more of a voice with Trump. He calls out Trump when Trump's wrong on things like civil liberties or foreign policy issues, and is counterbalance to Lindsey Graham, who has never met a war he disliked. Now, in his speech, Paul railed against Biden for supporting this war, but when Congress, in a rare act of bipartisanship, passed a resolution stopping the president in engaging any further military action against Iran without congressional approval, Trump vetoed it. So when Congress just this year said you're not allowed to go to war with Iran, Trump vetoed it, which is not necessarily the act of a non-interventionist person who's looking for peace. He says, I have the war powers. You're going to let me keep the war powers. I'm not giving this up. So it has so many things where Donald Trump will do good things. You have to take it with such a big, giant grain of salt because he's so unpredictable that he will flip-flop at any moment if it benefits him. So some of these militaristic impulses are not evidence of a non-interventionist. They're evidence of a person who just feels that domestic policy, specifically igniting culture wars, is much more beneficial to his reelection. He felt if it hadn't been for impeachment and his getting bogged down and trying to defend himself, he probably felt that a war would have been in his interest to gaining popularity and winning the election, which is why he did the Soleimani stuff he did. So I don't give him – he gets partial credit in terms of his record.
He backs into some good things.
Yeah.
Basically.
So at the end of his first term, he has not ended any wars and has either escalated certain conflicts or risked escalation of military engagement with countries like Iran when he approved the drone strike of the Iranian general Qasem Soleimani. The Trump administration is, in reality, resisting any and all attempts by Congress to rescind the authorization for use of military force that previously gave George W. Bush permission to wage war. In the final months of the Obama presidency, approximately 198,000 active duty U.S. military personnel were deployed overseas, according to the Pentagon's Defense Manpower Data Center. By comparison, the most recent figure for the Trump administration is 171,000 active duty troops. So he has decreased troop levels by about 25,000. Not to zero, as a libertarian president would fight for. Any final thoughts on his foreign policy before we move on? Okay, let's talk about Donald Trump's 50-point plan for his second term. Now, none of these points were expanded upon in the press release, released August 23rd, 2020. But let's run through what he promises to do. Jobs. He's going to create 10 million new jobs in 10 months. How many times have we been told by Republicans that presidents don't create jobs? Create 1 million new small businesses. Cut taxes to boost take-home pay and keep jobs in America. Enact fair trade deals that protect American jobs. Quote, made in America tax credits. Expand opportunity zones, which I believe is a mix of ending regulations and tax incentives in certain places. Continue deregulatory agenda for energy independence. So we're going to be energy independent by deregulating that industry. He is going to eradicate COVID-19. He is going to develop a vaccine by the end of 2020. We will return to normal in 2021. Make all critical medicines and supplies for healthcare workers in the United States. And refill stockpiles and prepare for future pandemics. He wants to end our reliance on China. Bring back 1 million manufacturing jobs from China. Tax credits for companies that bring back jobs from China. He is going to allow 100% expensing deductions for essential industries like pharmaceuticals and robotics who bring back their manufacturing to the U.S. No federal contracts for companies who outsource to China. And hold China fully accountable for allowing the virus to spread around the world. Healthcare. Cut prescription drug prices. No, that's not Joe Biden's platform plank. That's the Republican presidential nominee's platform plank. He's going to tell private companies what they can charge or not charge, which is an intervention in the marketplace. Put patients and doctors back in charge of our healthcare system. Lower healthcare insurance premiums, another intervention. End surprise billing. Cover all pre-existing conditions. Protect Social Security and Medicare. And protect our veterans and provide world-class healthcare and services. Now, as far as I know, he's been in charge of the VA for 4 years. He could have done something about that. Protecting Social Security and Medicare, it boggles the mind that the largest piece of our federal budget and deficits come from Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, and he's not going to touch it. So take that for what it's worth. Education. He's going to provide school choice to every child in America and teach American exceptionalism. Okay. Now, I have a different version of American exceptionalism than Donald Trump. Okay, so sort of like teaching religion in schools. It's almost exactly like teaching a religion in schools. Mike Pence took a verse from Hebrews, took out Jesus, and put in the flag in his convention speech, if you haven't seen that. So my version of American exceptionalism is that this country is exceptional in the world stage because it was a marked shift towards the individual being in charge of their own lives, away from state and centrally planned control over their lives. So America is exceptional because we value free market, spontaneous order, and many libertarian values. That you are free to live your life as you see fit, as long as you don't hurt other people, steal their stuff. That was the purpose of setting up the system in the way that the system was originally founded. And it was set up to frustrate authoritarians who wish to control the markets and personal lives. Obviously, that has all been eroded through the last 250 years. But that's what makes America exceptional. In my view, Donald Trump's view of American exceptionalism is Donald Trump. Somebody who is loud and confident and rich with gold plating, Las Vegas, lots of money, wealthy, can buy a lot of things, has the most guns, strongest-willed person, and then just flat-out pure American propaganda with waving the flag and never saying anything bad about his version of America, but denying that other people with different experiences than him, let's be honest, white, rich, and militaristic. That is Donald Trump's view of American exceptionalism, in my opinion. Am I wrong?
You are not wrong.
Okay.
My view of exceptionalism is a little different, and it's being able to point out that Donald Trump is all these things and not be considered anti-American for doing so.
Yeah.
To be able to disagree with our government and seek for redress of our issues through the government process, right? That's where we have exceptionalism. When you have his view of exceptionalism is basically ostracizing anybody who speaks out against what is considered the government or the society or whatever. You either follow these rules and you do these things and you support the flag and you be patriotic and you support any war that we want to go to because it's all in our best interest, or you're a degenerate that's anti-American, you're a commie, you should be hung out to dry.
I saw one libertarian podcaster that I'm friendly with say Rittenhouse didn't kill any people, he just killed communists.
Yeah.
That's the mindset of Donald Trump and where he's leading the nation, and that's just an unconscionable, disqualifying statement, to be honest.
It's the dehumanization of anybody you disagree with.
Yeah, and providing
fascism.
It's the path to fascism. It totally is. The provide school choice to every child in America. That's not the federal government's job. Drain the swamp. Pass congressional term limits. Now, these were all points from this is redo stuff he didn't get done, tried to do, and then reverse course on, as you heard in the last episode. Pass congressional term limits. End bureaucratic government bullying of U.S. citizens and small businesses. Expose Washington's money trail and delegate powers back to peoples and states. Drain the globalist swamp by taking in international organizations that hurt American citizens. He tried to seize, like, COVID illustrates that he's full of shit. Like, Larry Hogan had to hide and protect his masks and PPE from the federal government so they wouldn't come and seize them. The governor of Maryland literally had to have armed guards around his PPE because the federal government was trying to steal it to send it to other places or keep it for themselves. Donald Trump wants to defend our police, fully fund and hire more police and law officers, increase criminal penalties for assaults on law enforcement officers, prosecute drive-by shootings as acts of domestic terrorism, bring violent extremist groups like Antifa to justice, end cashless bail, and keep dangerous criminals locked up until trial. I can't tell you how much I disagree with all of that, which is basically illustrated in why Joe Biden was wrong on our episode on Joe Biden's record, if you want more expounding on that. But let me take on the domestic terrorism and bringing Antifa to justice. And the problem is that is a complete rejection of classical liberalism and the principles of the American founding, which, again, illustrates he does not understand American exceptionalism. If you are in a riot, if you were in downtown Kenosha 2 nights ago, and you were standing there and doing nothing, you are not a criminal. When you hit somebody, break someone's stuff, or, committing fraud, your beliefs are fraud, but you are not a criminal by association or holding an ideology. What Donald Trump is basically saying is, I want to take the indefinite detention of innocence, the denial of due process, the just flat out murdering of Muslims. He wants to import that to America and bring, again, the domestic policy is going to be the foreign policy of John McCain. Remember when we all got really outraged at the Fusion Center in Missouri in like 2010 that labeled Ron Paul, Libertarians, don't tread on me flags? Those people were domestic terrorists and needed to be watched. Remember when the Obama administration said we were domestic terrorists and everybody needs to be paid attention to in the Libertarian and Tea parties? Like, the American legal system does not, it assumes you're innocent until it can prove you guilty. But this mindset is that if you are there, you are guilty by association and that you have to prove your innocence. It's a complete flip of the American legal system. And on the policing stuff, the law in America is already greatly tilted towards the police officer in an altercation. All a police officer has to do is say, I feared for my life. And they have the ability to met out the death penalty for anybody that is committing any kind of crime, or even if it's a traffic stop. That could be the death penalty if the cop just says he feared for his life. And there are crowds that will go along with that and think that it's okay for somebody to be murdered. There are literally libertarians saying it's okay for two people to be murdered by vigilantes because of guilt by association. We have no idea if the people that were killed by Kyle Rittenhouse committed any sort of crime whatsoever.
Right.
And so how do you have a functioning society where it's just okay to kill whoever you don't like? That is barbarism. That is not the American system. That is not America. That is not classical liberalism. That is not libertarianism. That's barbarism. It's not human. It's inhuman. And so it's just another form. It's the same mentality on the right that socialists, the far socialists, will produce. And I cannot disagree with it enough. And I'm not going to call out specific people because I'm not trying to beef, but I just think that is an insane, inappropriate, dangerous way of thinking that rejects everything this country stands for.
How many decades have libertarians tried to point out all the people who are in jail right now on trumped up charges, lies by the police, police planting evidence, police planting guns? They carry around a burner gun just for that purpose. So if there's a shooting, they throw a gun in there. Oh, he had a gun. How many decades have we been trying to call this information out, and now we're just going to throw it all away because we want to get the commies?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Drop gun. Total drop gun.
It's one thing for private citizens to have that mentality. It's a whole nother thing for the weight of the most powerful government on earth to engage in that kind of behavior. You don't want that. Like that literally, if I have a disagreement with Donald Trump as a libertarian podcaster, am I a domestic terrorist? It's a lot of what's going on with the scaremongering by the Trump campaign and the Republicans reminds me so much of the 2003 lead up to war, but we're doing it to American citizens, and it's really frightening and it's really problematic, and it's not going to end well if adults don't start stepping up and saying this we're not going to allow this in America. Next point, end illegal immigration and protect American workers. Block illegal immigrants from becoming eligible for taxpayer-funded welfare. Bill Clinton already passed that in 1994, I believe, 96. Block them from becoming eligible for health care and free college tuition. Mandatory deportation for non-citizen gang members. Dismantle human trafficking networks. End sanctuary cities to restore our neighborhoods and protect our families. Prohibit American companies from replacing the United States citizens with lower-cost foreign workers. Require new immigrants to be able to support themselves financially, which is okay. Innovate for the future. Launch Space Force. Establish permanent manned presence on the moon and send the first manned mission to Mars. Like we can afford that shit. That's like there's somebody in my
credit card. He's got a U.S. black card, right?
I live in a very I don't live in a poor apartment complex, and I don't live in a rich apartment complex, and there's a neighbor that has a Bentley. You live in an apartment complex, dude. Like that's the kind of mentality. Build the world's greatest infrastructure system. Win the race to 5G and establish national high-speed wireless internet. Oh yeah, let's put the government in charge of the internet. That sounds like a great idea, especially when they're spying on all of us and they want to label people as domestic terrorists. Let's give them the ability to manage our wireless network and our internet. Good idea.
If you have a problem, you'll get great service, just like, if you go to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles and you want to get service, or the IRS and you want to get something taken care of. That's the prompt care that the government will give you.
Imagine the internet goes out and you have to call the government to fix it. You think you'll yearn for the days that AT&T was in charge of your shit. Partner with other nations to clean up our planet's oceans. Continue to lead the world in access to the cleanest drinking water and cleanest air. American first foreign policy. Stop endless wars and bring our troops home. Get allies to pay their fair share. Maintain and expand America's unrivaled military strength. Wipe out global terrorists who threaten to harm Americans. Build a great cybersecurity system and missile defense system. Okay. Defend American values. Continue nominating constitutional Supreme Court and lower court judges. How'd that work out for you with Judge Kavanaugh and Judge Roberts? Protect unborn life through every means available. When somebody says by any means necessary, it really starts to concern me. Defend the freedoms of religious believers and organizations. Support the exercise of Second Amendment rights. So some of that we agree with, some we don't. Matthew points out a contradiction. Stop wars and build and expand military strength. And these aren't policies. They're vague goals. How are we going to do that? How are we going to pay for it? How's that going to work?
Why didn't you do it the last 3 years?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, so Jacob's exactly right. These all seem like ideas that can be fleshed out in the free market. There's a few good ideas presented that would be best done by a free market, and you are totally right. We're not going to get into it, and we don't have time because I don't want to spend my whole life talking about the presidential election. But, there's the COVID response. There's the stimulus package that was passed that basically put $12 trillion into the American economy, 6 from a stimulus package and 6 from the Fed. Reduce spending. Spending's gone up every single year. There's so many different things in a president's record of any type that are problematic.
He wants to protect American workers with tariffs, and it just makes people have to pay more for goods and services.
All right.
Go ahead. I was going to say, and COVID has given it's a good obfuscational smokescreen of probably what would happen to manufacturing and the Midwest this summer, with those tariffs in place. Sorry.
All right. Well, we have so for our patrons, we do a monthly-ish show called Build the Wall, where we get everybody together on the network. We got 30, 40 people that work on the network, and today at noon, in 10 minutes, we're going to have one of those episodes, and we put it up. Our $100 a month patrons get to participate. $25 patrons get to listen, and it's just a way for you to know what your Patreon money is being used for and how, as well as get to talk to us directly and give feedback and get to know some of the other people involved in the We Are Libertarians network. You can sign up on Patreon and get that now. That's but I never in my wildest imagination thought that we'd need from 9 to noon to do today's show, but here we are. So let's go around the horn. So my point in saying that is be brief. Final thoughts, Rhinehold.
Final thoughts is I think we have a horrible choice in front of us if we follow the two-party model, that we have to choose between either Biden or Trump, and I reject that. I think we have another option we can choose, and we should choose that one. Joe Jorgensen.
I agree. If you are a principled person that believes in something, there's no reason that you can look at Donald Trump's record of behavior and vote for Donald Trump in good conscience. There's no way to look at Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's record and vote for them in good conscience if you believe in if you believe that it's going to work. Register a protest vote. People often don't have the courage to make change, but once you make that change and you start smashing that different button, I'm under no illusions that the Libertarian Party is going to get elected president or that they're going to impact much. In fact, I have a lot of evidence that it doesn't. But at the end of the day, I can look myself in the mirror knowing that I didn't vote for these two people. I'm glad that I can register and show up in the vote totals as a person who says, I don't buy into your system. I don't buy into the death cult of Republicans and Democrats. So I appreciate that option exists. And it gives me an opportunity to exercise my First Amendment rights. Those are my final thoughts. Harry, yours?
Oh yeah. What I like is Sam's the show notes for the show for what Sam did. This is a great PDF. So when someone goes, when you're at work, most of the time this happens to me when I try to, not defending Trump, but just like, hey, we're going to talk bad about him. Let's actually use his record. He's actually a lot of bad things we can happen. And Sam's notes are a great, just not really like a stick, just more of just a billboard. Like, hey, do you really like this guy? Or you listen to say this thing? Like, here, let's actually talk this together and really, hash out and look at facts. But the other thing I want to go to is the whole North Korea, China situation. I really feel that the main thing that what North Korea was doing was trying to rebuild that relationship they had with China. China was kind of the relationship between China and North Korea was actually breaking down a little bit on the back end, and actually was kind of North Korea needed China's economic might to buy more stuff and allow China to buy more stuff from North Korea to help them out. So the one way to get to threaten them is like, hey, we could be doing this instead. So that's why I feel that's what mostly that case is. Yeah, I think I've just been researching way too much stuff with China. So that's where my head has been for the last week.
Yeah, do that bonus episode. Come on, man.
Well, I would have did it. I just got upset, but I've got like a massive. I took a great team, so I've got Escalja and Vincent Cooper from the Discord. We've put together some notes about trying to do an episode on China and what's going on, basically on the region, not just China in general, but what China's doing in the region. So, like what China's in India, Vietnam, Thailand, Australia, Japan, Russia, So China's poking a lot of things. So
that's what she said. All right. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate everybody for dropping in. And hey, the most powerful thing you can do to help spread the word is share it. Share it with your friends, your family. Say this is a different take than anything anybody else is saying out there. There's tons of facts in here. I recognize that sharing a 2.5-hour episode with your friends and family is a lot. So we are cutting out the video and posting on YouTube the chunks. There's also markers in the audio now, so you can go and fast forward that. And so if you heard anything and you're just like, man, I really need that. So we have all that stuff posted at the website and on our YouTube channel, and on Instagram TV, and you can go and grab the chunks of this stuff. Take out all the stuff that's not relevant, like our chit chat and dated references, and like I want them to hear this about what he's going to do, but I don't want them to hear this about the Rittenhouse stuff. We got it all chunked out for you on the YouTube channel. So please spread the word, share the word about We're Libertarians. We appreciate it, and we will talk to you again next week.